We've been approached by many different property investors who have stated to us they understand that there is a 6-month rule, and that rule means that you can't remortgage a property within 6 months of purchase. Is that really the case? Well, that's one thing that we're going to discuss in this short video. Firstly, the Council of Mortgage Lenders set out a guideline about remortgaging within 6 months, not a set rule. And so it is a lender's choice as to whether they will allow a remortgage inside of 6 months or whether they will not. And some lenders have it as strict policy that they will not consider it, but other lenders are more flexible as long as the circumstances surrounding the reason why you want to remortgage it within 6 months is suitable. So, before we talk about the solution, let me introduce myself. I'm Howard Bowes, I'm Managing Director and a Mortgage Advisor for Harvey Bowes Limited. We are specialists very much in the buy-to-let field and also residential mortgages. Now, what about this 6-month rule? Firstly, many of the lenders in the market on an off-the-shelf product will not allow a remortgage inside of 6 months. So what do we mean by an off-the-shelf product? Well, firstly, if you imagine we have our residential mortgages at one level, regulated fully by the FSA, and they are off-the-shelf mortgage products. So there is an advertised headline rate, the fees are advertised up front. If you as a borrower meet the criteria for that lender, then you can apply for that particular mortgage. Then we have buy-to-let, not regulated in the same way by the FSA. However, they are still mortgage products which are, as we say, off the shelf. So it's a specific product range that's offered by specific lenders. But then we also have commercial mortgages, and buy-to-let properties or property that are purchased for investment also fall into this category, and there's the availability of commercial mortgages. And the approach to a commercial mortgage is a completely different approach than that of an off-the-shelf buy-to-let. So that's the things that we're going to deal with and talk about how that works for somebody who might want to remortgage a property inside of 6 months. So firstly, out of those off-the-shelf buy-to-let products, the ones that you see advertised on sourcing systems and on websites, those particular products, there are very few lenders that will allow a remortgage inside of 6 months. One lender that does, just for an example, is Mortgage Trust. Mortgage Trust is one of the lending arms of Paragon, and Paragon Finance, under the Mortgage Trust brand, will allow a remortgage inside of 6 months. They do have certain criteria that has to be met, of course, and also they need a good reason why you would want to remortgage inside of 6 months. But importantly, they will allow an uplift. So, let's take some figures for example. We'll keep them easy. You buy a property for $150,000 and you've put a deposit in to purchase that property. Perhaps you bought slightly under market value and it's a property that perhaps needs some refurbishment. So, plan your exit route from the start, of course, and so your projection is that once you finish that property it's going to be worth £200,000. You don't want to sell it. What you want to do is rent the property out once it's finished. With Mortgage Trust, if you've bought at 150 and you've genuinely added value to that property by way of refurbishment or improvement, then they will consider lending at the uplifted value. So for this example we've said £200,000. This means that you can now get a mortgage on that property at 75% and therefore £150,000. Now admittedly, you might not be able to get quite back all of the money you've put in as a deposit, and you might not be able to get back all of the money that you've made for a refurbishment. The point is as a landlord investor, you may have to leave some commitment in that property, but with that particular lender, it is fully declared up front exactly what the position is. The position with the deposit you paid at the beginning, and how much money you now want to release from that property. If you've improved the property and their valuer agrees with your valuation of £200,000, the rental income also fits, then you can legitimately take that £150,000 mortgage. So, how does that work to benefit you? Well, firstly, that means that some of the money you've put in as a deposit, maybe all, and some of the money that you've put in for the refurbishment could be recouped if the figures work. But the principle works. They will allow it. What it also means is that your existing mortgage on the property will have to be redeemed. So there, it could cause a problem, in the sense that that existing mortgage you've taken out to purchase in the first place may have an early redemption charge. Early redemption charges on buy-to-let are typically quite big figures, And so you would need to have the correct sort of strategy in dealing with that. You might take a bridging loan, you might have taken one of the buy-to-let mortgages that are nearer to a 60% loan to value, for example, for the purchase at the beginning, and there are some in the market currently in November 2012 when this video goes out that don't have any early redemption charges. So you could take that type of mortgage and then Mortgage Trust come in behind it once the refurbishment is done, assuming the refurbishment is within 6 months. If it's after a 6-month period you're looking to refinance, of course we have a greater choice of lenders. Now, the other way of doing it, of course, if you want to take 75% loan to value on the initial purchase of that property, and you're somebody that's looking to expand your property portfolio, it might well fit within your strategy to take that existing mortgage, 75% on the property when you purchase it. Arrange for the remortgage after the refurbishment is done and the valuer can see that there's been improvements to the property from Mortgage Trust. So that mortgage is going to come in behind. But instead of redeeming this existing mortgage that you have with the first lender for the purchase, you may be able to port that mortgage across to a new property. So if you're making an additional purchase, you've also got that flexibility if the buy-to-let mortgage you choose in the first place is portable. And that way, although there will be fees to port, a valuation fee, etc., as you'd expect, an early redemption charge may not apply. And that's a very good strategy. So what we've talked about there is the off-the-shelf product option that you have for a remortgage inside of 6 months. But also, as we said at the beginning, many of the lenders who do commercial lending for buy-to-let, so a commercial product as opposed to an off-the-shelf product, are much more flexible about the 6-month rule in the first place. The difference is it might be a little bit harder to get 75% loan to value. Typically the loan to values would be lower than that in the current market, but on the commercial side, if the rental income stacks up and you stack up as an applicant, then you would be able to consider a commercial mortgage going through the commercial arm of a bank where the 6-month rule wouldn't apply. That's just a brief synopsis of what we know is available at the current time. We're here to give advice on all matters of buy-to-let, and we'd be delighted to talk to you, no matter how tentative at this stage your inquiry might be. Our telephone numbers are here on the website. Please contact me, Howard Bowes, Harvey Bowes Mortgages. Thank you.